Welcome to part 4 of the 1983 Indy 600. So here we are on part 4, and we're exactly where we left off on part 3. No progress has been made for 2 weeks. And it's fall. There's a lot of stuff going on. Working on cars, car shows, sled swaps, all kinds of stuff. So I've been out doing that stuff. I even got in a couple days of off-road riding in the middle of this week. So life's been good, and I'm not feeling real guilty. But I do need to get this thing moving again. I don't want it to be on the table for 6 months. As you guys know, the list is really long. Insert list here. So the ultimate goal for today is to get the track and skid in, which also entails the chain case, jack shaft, drive shaft. I've got quite a bit of little piddly work to do on that. This particular reverse chain case, it has Hyvo gears in it, and the top gear is a 15 spline, and I don't have any of those. So for $5 at a swap meet, I picked up a 15 spline jack shaft and a nice splined brake rotor, as opposed to the older style that this came with the 1/4-inch keyway. So I got to go through and refresh the chain case here. It needs a lot of cleaning help, new bearings, new seals. The drive shaft, I also want to run the seals, and I've got this really nice drive shaft with 4 wheels on it, but as you can see, it doesn't have the ring for the seals. So I guess I'll be swapping all these wheels over to a different drive shaft. That's a chore. There's a couple bearings we identified, I think in part 3, where we feel they're pretty sketchy on the skid, so I'll be changing those. Just a whole lot of busy work today. I'm going to take it easy on you. I'm not going to show it in detail. I'll just kind of give you the highlights, and I'm going to get moving on this thing. Alright, I've made an executive decision here. I have a ton of these drive shafts with no ring on them. I'm just going to add a ring to this one. It's going to be quicker and easier to do a little bit of machine work and get the ring pressed on there than it's going to be to press, half a dozen drivers on and off. Alright, well, that machining exercise ended up being a complete waste of time because I didn't do my homework before I started. These splines are nearly 100 thousandths shorter than the other ones. I got 1.140 roughly, and over here I've got more like 1.25 inches. I don't know if you can see that. Sorry, I'm not holding the camera great. And the reason being, these are for a 13 wide gear. These are for an 11 wide. This chain case is definitely wider than an 11 wide. So I guess I'll get to pressing. It's depressing. From the Just Can't Win files. Yeah, that's the shaft with the ring in the foreground. Look at how short this is turned back compared to this one. This had a press-on bearing here. You're going to have to chuck her in the lathe and make her fit the set screw, set collar type bearing. Alright, here we go again with the custom parts. You shouldn't have to do this. I don't know if this drive shaft came off and evolved or what, but it had a pressed on bearing here. I want to use the set screw type bearing. I don't know, that's just what my setup is. I think it's a little more forgiving. So here we go. I'm going to rough it down with that carbide, and then I'm going to come back with this little more delicate one and try to pick up the final diameter and run that down. If I put it in gear. Alright, I've been polishing on this a little bit because the bearing is a little too tight of a fit. You do want that to go on free. It doesn't quite yet. Give her a little more of a polish. I'm just using, you know, some emery cloth, and let's see if we can get that bearing to slip on. Alright, some more polishing, and I like that. That's real good. Just slides nice and easy. Nothing should bind up, but you know, she's pretty tight. She's got like a thou, maybe a thou and a half of clearance, whatever it needs to slide. Ain't bad. So we're going to go with that. And once again, you shouldn't ever have to do this. If I wasn't such a dumbass, I would have bought a drive shaft at one of the last 2 swap meets I went to. There were piles of them. I could have had one for $5. Would have saved me a bunch of time. Alright, back here at the lift table, just giving you a quick comparison. Looks like a match to me. Close enough. It's definitely going to work. Alright, time to get this stupid drive shaft together. So one thing I want to point out that I've already done on these, you can see some orange paint. I've already went around and marked, and on the center ones I marked both sides of where they index. All those marks are going to line up in the same spot. So these are 9-tooth wheels, and the shaft is a hex. So one of these teeth lines up flat in the middle of the hex. That's this one. And it's on every wheel. So just thought I'd show you that. I do that before I start any assembly or pressing on the drive shaft. Alright, so this is the shaft I'm going with the sealing ring on it, and I'm leaving the sealing ring on. So that means I got to start with an outer wheel, which is going to go the whole frickin' length of the shaft. And this is how I get my wheels started. I just tap them on, rotate till it lines up, get them going. So get it on, get it started, make sure it's square, it's not chewing up the hex, and now I'll go over to the press and run that SOB. Well, I'm probably going to actually run it just about up to the sealing ring, because it's a lot easier to adjust it back in after I'm done than it is to push it out. Alright, here's a couple tricks for you. Trick number 1, how do you get rid of used tracks? Put a wood blade on your Sawzall, cut them into squares, and throw them in your garbage can. If they fit, they'll take them. Trick number 2, keep one of those squares. They're frickin' awesome for making sure your drivers are aligned. So obviously I have this one way too far to the outside, which is fine. I'll move it in a bit. But right now, you can see that I've got my width about right on these drivers. So I think I'm going to knock this guy back in more or less to the right depth, and then I'm gonna do a little mock-up without the track with this and the chain case in the tunnel. See how it all fits together. Make sure these guys are actually centered. Normally I probably wouldn't do that. Normally I go off the measurements in the manual and all that stuff, but I got such a conglomeration of parts going at this point, I think a test run is probably in order. Alright, I got the stuff in to check and make sure those drivers are centered. Let me give you a quick look-see here, show you what I got going on. Alright, first off, as you can see, the sled is way up in the air. Yep, need to be able to get my head under there and look at stuff. That's also why I'm doing this with the front suspension still on. Makes it easier. I got the chain case bolted down, all 3 bolts. Now, because this is a reverse chain case, I just need the spline sleeve, this cup, and this spacer in there. So I got the drive shaft bolted in.
Now let's go over to the other side and show you something else really important. This is when you check your drive shaft alignment. Is your drive shaft centered in the hole? Sure is. You know, the video, yeah, it depends on where I hold the camera. But, you know, I'm happy with that. The drive shaft is for sure centered in the hole. Now let's go underneath. So I got two measurements to show you down here in the dark of the tunnel. So this side, you'll notice the 6-inch mark is right on the inside of that driver, right on the chamfer. Now let's run around to the other side. I'm gonna do this left-handed. And hard to see, but it is maybe an 1/8 inch over towards the chain case. So 1/8 inch, I'm going to go back to the press, give these a tweak, and recenter things, and check it one more time. Alright, I've got these drivers, the two center ones anyways, centered within a gnat's ass, and then I've got my spacing set right. So if I push this thing to the left, it's hitting here, here, and here all at once, and when I shift it over to the right, same thing. It's hitting on the outside wheel, this side, and this side. So that's optimal. Gives me the most side-to-side play I can have, the most track misalignment I can have before it starts rubbing hard on those little drive wheels and costing power and creating friction. Sure wish Details was here right now because I got a lot of cleaning ahead of me. Should be nice to have an extra hand on that stuff. Anyways, I'm going to get to the cleaning. I need to clean out under the belly pan. I need to clean the chain case and all the components and anything else I can see. And also fix that Scotch lock wiring disaster. I want to get all that done before I really start in on the assembly, before I put the drive shaft and the track back in. I'll bring you back when that stuff's done. This is the way it had to be. No amount of wiping was ever going to get me satisfied. I need to pressure wash it. We're sitting here between rounds of degreaser, letting in round 2 soak in. And then I decided, since I got the pressure washer out, what the hell? Let's pressure wash the chain case too and see how decent we can get that to look. I may not have to paint it. We'll find out. Alright, let's get after the skid while the chassis and chain cases and such are outside drying. So, these two wheels here, they're shot. Gonna change those. This one's good. This one's way loose, just like these front two. So gonna change all those. These up here feel pretty good. They're not bad. Gonna leave them alone. And then on the back axle here, all four are nice and quiet and tight. So we're gonna go with that. Amazingly, this skid has gas shocks front and rear. So basically I'm going to change out those 3 bearings and throw it back in. The high facts are fine, everything's fine. To change out the bearings, I'm just going to take the limiter strap loose, take these 2 bolts loose, and then I'll be able to change those bearings on those wheels. This wheel is even easier, it's just those 2 bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera, and I'll bring you back in a bit. Alright, well here's one of those things that'll happen sometimes when you're working on a suspension. I don't know if you could see this, but that is slipped way to the rearward. Well, 1/3 of a bolt hole anyways, and I can't get it to start. What's the easy way to get it in there? Ratchet strap. So I'll just ratchet strap that thing forward and the bolt will go right in. Well, I got those bearings replaced. Everything on the skid took grease, all the zerks, except for this one, which popped right out. Luckily, it's a dry fit, so I drove it back. But this shaft is not quite stuck, but she's going to be a battle. Alright, I got that shaft out. Yeah, a little drier than I'd like to see. So we're going to clean things up. Grease it real well, and make sure the zerk is flowing, then we'll get her back together. Alright, so here's how we get the tube cleaned out. A lot of you probably do this already. It's just a piece of old starter rope with some red rag on the end. Whatever rope, it's just got to be thick enough to push it through and long enough to grab it on the other side. And yep, you're gonna get greasy. It's just a fact of life. Give her some brake cleaner. Soak down your rag. Lovely, huh? Works every time. Alright, well, after further review, I'm going to chuck this thing in the lathe and polish it up. She's got some pretty good rust deposits on her. We'll get her cleaned up. Well, it turns out that in addition to being rusty and dirty, the shaft was bent. I found out when I put it in the lathe. I don't know if you can see the indicator. Sure you can. So I got the indicator on the bottom. So I put the high spot there. That's the high spot on the bottom. That means it's bowed that way. So I want to go to the low spot. Right there. I'm going to press it down until it's, you know, essentially halfway in between. And hopefully get it straightened out to within a few thousandths of an inch. Well, 1 minute later, we get steady here. It's like a few thousandths of an inch to me. We'll go try it and see if it slides through easier. Finally got the sled back up on the lift. It's 20 after 4. I'm going to work on this for like another hour, and then I'm going to start editing because it's Sunday and you guys want a video on Monday. So let's see how far we can get in an hour. First thing, I'm going to get the jack shaft in, get the bearing and the flanges on. Why that first? Because there's that really shitty to get to nut up in the tunnel, and I want to at least get it on and snug before I slip in the drive shaft and the track. Alright, let's give you a quick look. See, it's about 20 after 5, which is about when I planned on quitting. Well, that looks like a chain case that's bolted in. That looks like a ripsaw track on a skid with all 4 bolts on it. And as we come around over here, things are at least started. Good girl, Farley. Alright, well, I guess I made my goals and I got it done in the time I thought. I sure made things harder than I needed to. I should have just bought a used drive shaft at a swap meet. Whatever. My bad, my dumb there. But everything else worked out pretty good. The skid, yeah, I complained, but it's pretty typical. You know, wasn't an excessive amount of work to get the skid back reconditioned. The assembly, yeah, it went pretty quick. I wish the boys would have been here today. Hopefully we'll get them on the next episode. But until then, I just want to say thanks for watching. Huge thanks to the patrons, Aaron Shriver, Michael Johnson, Matt DeFossi, Charles Myers, Alex Sherrill, Brandon Pariseau, Dan Hosnute, Mike Jerish, and Louis Brady. Thanks for joining us there, Louis. And if you want to be a patron, well, go over and check out my Patreon page. The link's in the description. And you can help support the channel for $5 or $10 a month to help buy us some pizza and some beer, which, you know, we'll use that when the boys are over. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe.